All right, so welcome to another Q&A. This one is talking about the difference between the high flow and the low flow rinse bars in the ultralights and lights. And so there's a lot of information to share to get to the point, but basically you have a flow rate at your point of source, which could be out of your filter or out of your tap. And what's going to happen is you've got a whole lot of hose and tube, and then you've got gravity, the effective gravity, which is 5 psi per 10 feet, something like that. And so at the end of the day, we want to be able to make sure that we've got enough velocity and volume of water coming out of a brush. Let me grab a brush. There's a little prop.
Light and ultra light.
Okay, so we've got light and ultralight. So there are certain people in the world where the flow rate, particularly when somebody's at the point of purchasing, because they don't have the long journey with us along the pathway of the scientific development of the radial brushes. And so for them, at that point in their journey, the flow rate is critical because they don't want a too high a flow rate. Mostly it's people either in a drought area or people in UK and Europe where they carry their own water and they only have 600 liters or 200 gallons, per day with them on their site, and they can't tap into the customer's water. So we have, firstly, we want a flow rate at the point of source, which is maybe at least double what we want at the brush. And most of the radial brushes are designed for 2 liters per minute or half a gallon per minute. And the reason for that is because that gives you an incredible flow. It's over the top, it's on glass, and we can get the water with the radial pattern of the jets. We can get the water into the corners, and we can turn the water off when we angle the brush. The gravity will pull more water out of the bottom of the brush, less water out of the top of the brush, so the top jets turn off, and so we can run across the top edge without wetting above where we've agitated, whether it's the top edge of the frame or the top edge of the glass, depending on how you clean the windows and how often. Pardon me. So, when somebody has a need for a low flow, we would reduce the flow rate from half gallon a minute to a third of a gallon a minute, or 2 liters a minute to 1.5 liters per minute. And for the radial light and the ultralight, they both use the same rinse bars, so you can interchange them between the two. So anybody who's a normal reach it customer would buy what we call high flow rinse bars, which is 2 liters a minute. And if they are a new customer or they're carrying water and they don't understand the radial technique and how much faster it will make you on the glass, then you can buy a low flow rate, and that's 1.5 liters per minute. Both of them work pretty much the same because of the design of the brush. So it's not really a challenge from a productivity point of view, but there's no doubt that the more water you have on the glass, in particular understanding that water doesn't go through a radial brush, water stays on top of the radial brush. We angle the brush and all the water runs to one side. So if you're going down the frame, you've gone through the corners and you go down the frame, all the water is going here and it flushes an amazing amount of water down. And that is critical if you're going to be trying to flush spider webs without having to go back and chase them down the glass like we would with pencil jets.
So how do you get these different rinse bars, high flow and low flow? You choose them, right, in the web store?
Yeah, you can choose them in the web store, and basically the difference is the ID of the orifices of the jet streams. So one has a bigger ID than the other. And so to understand that, you have to understand, flow equals pressure times resistance. And so the smaller we make the hole, the greater the resistance, the higher the velocity. Now what we want is the velocity that will squirt the flow rate this far, right?
Yeah, we don't want it to have a velocity to create aerosols all over.
Yeah, if you put 2 liters a minute through a 1.5 liter a minute brush, the water will squirt that far. But we only want the water to squirt this far. We don't want to blast, we're not pressure washing the window, we don't want to blast the window. So if you had a low flow rate brush and the water was squirting, 18 inches to 2 feet, then you would turn the flow rate down at the tap or somewhere in your system. Because you don't need, a low flow rate brush shouldn't be operating on a high flow rate, right? And we've got some videos from Modman and the Oracle for that.
YouTube channel.
Yes, Future of Cleaning, yeah. So youtube.com/Future of Cleaning to go and have a look at the Modman and Oracle videos on that. And so the objective scientifically is to squirt the water, 10 inches, what's that, 25 centimeters from the jets, towards the window. They hit the window, the water then cascades down and sits on top of the bristles. The brush is slightly angled in the downstroke, so all the water goes to one side, so you have an amazing flush. And that is the principle why we don't need a second phase rinse action.
And also with the pivot, that's why you can angle the brush so easily.
So you've got a pivot in there. This one's a bit tight, but you've got a pivot in there.
You don't need to angle the pole.
Yeah.
You angle the brush, just twisting the pole so that the pivot turns.
Nice. You see, you know a lot. So let me just see what this question was given to us by Wayne at Windows Washed in the US, and so he is talking about that. So we've talked about the flow rates. Oh, so which tube? Like for example, if you have a 5/16 inch tube, like our old Rhino tube, we don't sell that anymore. But if you have that and you
That's
don't want
the green one, by the way, on the wall there. That's the Rhino tube. Yeah.
That kind of OD compared to high flow, which is this OD, like so. So if you have a thin tube, which is really designed for pencil jets, right? Because the pencil jets, 2 or 4 pencil jets, don't need as much water as 26 jets, no matter what the diameter of the orifice of the jet stream. So the 5/16 tube is a carryover from the original water-fed pole brushes that have been selling for 50 years, right? So you really want to go, ideally you want to go to a 3/8 inch OD tube or a 10 millimeter OD tube. And what that will do for you is give you double the flow rate at half the pressure, right? Because the resistance is reduced, right? So you reduce the resistance, the flow rate stays the same, the pressure is half to achieve the same. So what we want to do from that perspective is make sure that you can choose the right brush that you want for the conditions that you have or the equipment that you have and the flow rates that you have and the water that you're carrying until you understand the technique using the radial technique that you don't have to go back and do a rinse. So most of the water is in water-fed window cleaning has been used in the rinse phase, especially on hydrophobic glass where the glass repels the water. Then you've got to kind of chase the dirty water off the glass with the pure water in order to not leave spots on the glass. And you can't tell the difference between dirty and clean water because they're both transparent. So then you spend more time rinsing to make sure you've done a good job, otherwise you get called back because there are spots on the glass. So with radial brushes, all of them, the brush in the downstroke turns all glass hydrophilic, which means the water will cascade. Now, if you get a cascading rinse, the last thing on the glass is going to be what is left on the glass. The water cascades, it's spot-free water. There's no minerals in it, so the water then will bead on the glass, the beads will evaporate, and when the beads of water have evaporated, there's no minerals to be left on the glass because minerals can't evaporate, okay? So our job is to, from an efficiency point of view in the radial technique, is to combine the agitation and the rinse into the same action. So you agitate on the upstroke, rinse on the downstroke, move to the next window. Now that takes some confidence because people have been doing this for 50 years and having a rinse phase. So initially what we find is guys coming from the tucker technique to the radial technique still habitually rinse. And of course there's always a job where you will want to rinse more for your own peace of mind and or because it was crazy dirty. I mean, one of the tricks on the rinse, by the way, which I might as well add here, is that if you have a flat brush and it's a really dirty window and you push the brush up the window, that you're disturbing the dirt into the water, right? But you're actually pushing dirty water up the glass. Now you pull down and that dirty water is what you're pulling down. So again, if you're angling the brush, you push and it's only like 5 degrees, push up, all that dirty water is running off to one side, right? Come down, you're putting pure water on the glass. Now you may have to do that 2 or 3 times, hopefully 2 is the ideal for maximum efficiency. Well, 1 is better, but that's regular cleaning. So the intention is to make sure that you've got the dirty water off in the upstroke and you're leaving the pure water on in the downstroke, right? So let's see what else he asked me. Are the rinse bars interchangeable? Yes. So the structure of both the light and the ultralight is they have one screw here. You take that one screw off, and then
remove the end cap.
And remove the end cap. Yep. And then you can see the rinse bar there is butting up into the brass swivel there. So this moves. Yep. So it can move with you. And that will then give you the ability to pull these rinse bars off. Always do it straight, because they are, in order to maximize the flow rate on the inside of the rinse bar, the wall thicknesses are not so thick, right? So we can get more water in there. So you just want to make sure you do everything, parallel to the channel. I mean, it's held in the channel anyway.
Yeah, otherwise the
rinse
rinse position will change if you put it in the wrong position.
No, not that. This is more about just the removal and replacement of them, is to make sure that everything is aligned, because if something's out of alignment, you're going to apply force at a non-linear sense, and that could potentially break apart, right? It doesn't happen. I don't even know if it has happened, but it's an important thing to know, right? Because you're basically sliding it inside a channel, and it's really tight in there.
We're going to make a video on that, by the way, so you can be sure that it can be easily done.
Yeah, and then then you pull the rinse bars out, check the orientation. There's a little lug here, right? So when you take them out, check the orientation of that. You've got a left and a right, and then you slide the new ones in, and you don't have to connect anything at the end. You just need to connect here and then put your end cap back on, and you've changed it from a high flow to a low flow. So that's good. We can do that. That's good. Sometimes we get asked about the white non-scratch pad. The only scrub that comes with it, which is not relevant to the topic, but is the white non-scratch pad at the moment. We have Magic Eraser coming soon. So we have Magic Eraser being set up for that. Magic Eraser is good for getting silicone, sticker residue, those kind of things. Some of the sticky type of things, which are film type things, come off with Magic Eraser. So there's a lot of guys using Magic Eraser for a lot of things. Science of the flow rate, understanding pressure, resistance, and flow. We've done that. So the flow rate will squirt further. Okay, so I do want to cover this thing, that in fluid dynamics, everybody wants to think about pressure, but it's actually not to do with pressure. You want the highest flow rate at the lowest pressure possible. What creates the pressure in a system, because your pressure gauge is close to your filter, right? So what creates the pressure is the resistance that's being built up cumulatively by the wall friction inside the tube and the effect of gravity as you go up. So you've got 5 psi pressure back to your pressure gauge. So that's your pressure gauge. If you increase the size of the tube, you'll have less pressure, less back pressure, so you'll be working with less pressure, right? The thing that we're actually looking for, so the reason why we change the size of the orifices of the jet streams is the smaller we make them, the greater the final resistance, right? So if you imagine you've got a garden hose and you don't have anything on it and you turn it on, the water may squirt this far before it falls to gravity. As you squeeze it, you create resistance, all right? And so that resistance, then the flow rate is the same. Flow rate doesn't change at any cross-sectional part of a fluid dynamic system. So you squeeze the tube, the flow rate is the same, resistance is greater, pressure has increased behind the resistance, and therefore the flow rate will travel at a higher velocity. So when you see somebody's got jets coming out of the brush like this, right, they say, I don't have enough pressure. You have too much pressure, probably. What you don't have is enough flow rate. So you can increase your flow rate by reducing the resistance, and it is irrelevant what the pressure is. Getting
a bigger hose, basically?
So what we do, the difference between a high flow rinse bar and a low flow rinse bar is simply the total sum of the cross-sectional area, pi r squared, of all the jets together. So if they, for example, if they were all 1 millimeter or 1 unit, we have 26 jets. Then if they were 2 millimeter, basically they'd have 4 times less resistance.
So
right?
the difference is the high flow and the low flow is the diameter of the actual...
Yeah, so we've got more resistance with a low flow, less resistance with a high flow. With more resistance as the final resistance in the system, the water will squirt further, right? So a high flow rate brush, the water will squirt a shorter distance, you know, but we only want 10 inches. If you've got pencil jets, you need 3 feet because you're going to lift it off the glass and you've got to squirt and manage the pole and use all your core and all that stuff.
I know that many people are thinking, oh, but we're using so much water if I'm going to go from the pencil jet to the radial. But actually, many people who have changed have said it's actually less water because you're cleaning faster and more efficient.
Correct. So the two go together, is that you must have the radial technique.
Yes.
You know, if you don't change your technique, of course, you're going to spend 4 minutes on a window before with your tucker technique, and you'll spend 4 minutes using your tucker technique on this brush. So you have to study the radial technique to understand how to clean windows faster. And the reality is that you'll use a higher flow rate in order to use significantly less time, maybe 4 times less time, right? Maybe 8 times less time, depending on how inefficient you are, depending on how inefficient your brush is right now.
You can check that video, by the way,
yeah.
Radial technique on the YouTube channel, or if you go to the radial page in the Future of Cleaning web store, you can check the technique there. It's a few minutes, very simple to just understand how to execute the radial technique, and then you can just practice it a bit so that you can get the tempo up.
I like this. I don't have to repeat you.
It's all about speed, baby.
Before, we didn't have Martin's voice very, very high, and I had to repeat what he said. That was very easy for me.
Hopefully, you guys can hear me a little better now. We have added, we have a lavalier mic on Perry, and then we're using a phone actually, and then we're gonna like sync those sounds together when I'm talking, so that you can hear me. Because we had some people mentioning that, so I thought we sort that out. Hopefully, it worked better.
Yeah, and then we've got some super high tech coming, haven't we? Yeah. So, I think that pretty much covers it. If I talk about that, the smaller ID tube increases the back pressure on the pump. You guys think that's cool, but actually we want more flow rate at lower pressure. Yes, and then the issue is just change your technique. So I had that whole conversation with
and we can't repeat that enough. The technique is so important.
Yeah, so we've got other video, like another video. It says like, you know, the lawnmower replaced the scythe, but you don't use a lawnmower like a scythe, or the jackhammer replaced the crowbar, but you don't use a jackhammer like a crowbar, or the vacuum replaced the broom, but you don't use a vacuum cleaner like a broom. If you realize that this is actually a high-tech revolution of a very simple product. It's a brush, but the changes are multiples. We're not talking about 5% incremental change or 10% incremental change. We're talking about multiples of change, like 2 times, 4 times, 8 times faster by mastering the technique and trusting the design of the tool, and then using the tool the way it's designed. And the end result, whilst we understand that, you know, radial brushes are expensive, the feedback that we get for the guys who have studied the radial technique and switched from another brush system to our brush system, they talk about it paying for itself in one day or in one job like that. You know, it's fascinating. So it makes us very excited, but we understand that there's still a long education because the market is obviously still only going to sell what they sell. So people will be tricked into buying lower efficiency products at a lower price, but actually the most expensive part of auto-fed window cleaning is the labor. So if you want to focus your attention on what part of the business to maximize, you maximize your efficiency with high efficiency tools. So you pay more for the tools and the guy works faster and you make more money, way more money.
And also we have a lot of testimonials on people who left the review on the different brushes.
Crazy numbers.
Yeah,
you
so
know,
it's like
$900 in 2 hours, $1,200 in 2 hours, you know, like that. And they just quoted it the way they would have quoted it before, and then they just find themselves incredibly efficient. And then I've got other testimonials where guys have gone in with their radial gear to help out another window cleaner on on a residential compound, like a complex with lots and lots of houses, or a business park complex, and then they start at the same point and they work their way around to meet each other, and the guy with the radial, you know, it meets the guy 2/3 of the way around, and the guy goes, how the hell have you cleaned the windows? Are you sure you've cleaned them and all that? And he goes, dude, like, you know, I just reach it.
Yeah, and using the correct technique with the high-tech brush that you can, you never lift the brush off the glass. It always stays on the glass, and you never have any dirt really inside, except for the agitation. The rinse, you always get the rinse compared to pencil jets where the rinse is inside the
pencil
brush.
jets, and the other rinse bars that are on the market, like trying to emulate what Reachit has done, but they basically emulate what we did in 2015, which is squirt the water straight at the glass. And when you press a brush against the glass, you splay the bristles out. So there's 1 inch added this side, 1 inch that side. They then make sure that the rinse bar doesn't start at the edge of the brush because they scratched the glass and the frames, and right? Also the first generation of some, you know, unnamed rinse bars scratched the frames.
Also the radial are perfect for the corner as well, because you can really get into the corner and rinse at the same time.
Somebody sent me a video of, you know, one of the great infamous trainers saying you can't put a round brush in a square corner, so he sells square cornered brushes. But if you have a square cornered brush in a square corner, all you can do is poke it into the corner and try and disturb things. But with a round bristle, you can scroll through the corner. So you're basically scrolling the bristles with the debris, and then you're going down the frame with all the water pouring and running all that off. So,
and also the bristles goes outside the block, so they actually, the block doesn't need to touch the corner.
They splay basically 1 inch either side. So when we call this a 14-inch brush, the block is 12 inches. The width on the glass when it's fully compressed, you know, so that these are on the glass, the inside bristles, then you'll get a 14 inches on the glass. The reason we did that is because if you want to know between using a 14-inch brush or an 18-inch brush, you know, small windows like squeegees, you know, you've got to use a small squeegee on a small window. But on a big window, switching to an 18-inch brush on a 32-inch wide window, you can clean the left side, clean the right side, and overlap in the middle. And you've got 2 actions and you've cleaned the window. So that's another form of efficiency, is choosing the right brush, but we digress.
So there's many things in the technology that makes it so easy to reach different parts of the window. It's like the pivot, it's the bristles going outside the block, and also the rinse on top. So there's a lot of things. And if you want to know more, we have a new series called the Tech Behind the Tool, where we go into detail on each of our brushes. That's going to be coming on YouTube from beginning of next week, I think.
Yeah, next week being March 23rd or something like that.
23rd, yeah, something like that.
Like that.
Maybe a little earlier.
2022.
Yes.
All right, because people can watch this in 2027.
Then you can really understand what is the technology.
Yeah. All right, let's wind it up on that one, and we'll go to and make another video for you.
Sweet.
Okay. So thanks very much. That's Q&A Friday. If you have any comments, we do read the comments and we answer them. So if you've got any comments or questions, please put them in below where you see this video, and we'll engage with you. Yeah. Cheers.